Hi, and welcome to Dollars and Making Sense, a weekly show about finance, money, and investing. I'm Ray Treverson from OTG Capital. I'm your host. And every week we try and bring on a tech specialist. And this week I'm really pleased to have back from the Institute of Financial Professionals of Australia, Natasha Panagis, who specialises in superannuation. Natasha, welcome back.
Thanks, Ray. Thanks for having me back on the show.
Wonderful. Look, it's always great to have you on because I guess super is near and dear to my heart. It's the thing that's, I think, is going to save many of our collective bacons as we move towards retirement. And given that the superannuation system is going to be celebrating its 30th anniversary this year, I believe, there are some key changes. We're going to talk today, the subject of the show today is Payday Super. But before we get into that nitty gritty, I just wanted to pick up on a couple of points before we get into, because I think we're going to pick up these themes during the course of this year. And so last year, the superannuation industry, and I'm quoting from an article, the industry and fund managers said, stop, we can't, we're too many changes, and yet we are coming in for more changes. I guess very quickly, Natasha, is it realistic to expect that the super being as big as it is and it's going to continue to grow, is it realistic to expect that things aren't going to change?
No, there's always change with super. 2023 was a huge year of announcements in regard to super. Many of those announcements are yet to be legislated. So this year we're expecting a number of these policy items to be finalised. Just a couple of those policy items. The first one's the objective of super. Now, the government introduced a bill on this in mid-November last year. So we're probably going to see that one get legislated this year. Also, the other main one, which I'm sure everybody has heard about, is the Division 296 measure. This is that extra 15% tax on earnings on, super balances above $3 million. Again, the government introduced a bill on this late November last year. So we're probably going to see this one get legislated, unfortunately. And there's a number of other items that we'll probably see this year as well, such as the quality of advice review recommendations. That's all about making financial advice more affordable and accessible. Retirement phase reforms that were, again, talked about in December last year, mainly looking at optimising the retirement phase of super. So there's a whole heap of things going on at the moment, and most likely to see a lot of these things, flesh out this year and most likely legislated. So a very busy year ahead, that's for sure.
And notwithstanding changes that are already legislated and simply coming down the road. So, for example, in July of this year, the super guarantee will again increase from 11 to 11.5. And we're on target, ladies and gentlemen, to be at 12% by 2025, which is what the Labor government always said they were going to do. And this goes back, 10, 15 years, I think, or more now, but it was stalled by the coalition. So with Labor back in power, those increases are now in play, and we've gone through 0.5 percentage points, haven't we, Natasha?
We have. We're almost there, almost at the 12% mark.
Correct.
So not too far away now. But also we've got the federal budget coming up in May, so we'll have to wait and see if the government has anything else up their sleeve come May this year.
I'm sure they will. I mean, they're battening down the hatches. I always use this term, given that it's likely this year won't be an election year, so they'll be getting everything ready to sweeten the pot so that they can go to the election in 2025 with a whole bunch of goodies under their arm, ready to curry favour. But I think some of the other factors that we're looking at, and given that today we're talking about Payday Super, unpaid super also is one of those factors that we're going to talk about today. And the taxman won back $528 million, according to this article I'm reading from recalcitrant employers, and also hit them with another $157 million in penalties. Ouch. But that's really the tip of the iceberg. There's a ton load of super that's not being paid at the moment by employers. Isn't that correct?
Right, Ray, and that's the whole gist of this Payday Super. It's really, as the government is putting it, to stop wage theft, which this wage theft, not paying super or underpaying super, does have significant impacts on everyday Australians' retirement outcomes. It could mean that they have to delay retirement, or it could mean that their retirement savings are reduced because of the loss of compounding returns. So the whole idea of Payday Super is to stop or minimise the non-payment or the underpayment of super guarantee. for all Australians.
I'm really pleased you use that terminology, Natasha, because I sometimes get into these rhetorical discussions with people and they're going, oh, it's just a bit of unpaid super. And I'm going, no, that's theft. They're actually stealing. And they're just masking it in funny speak, word salads, as I think we used to have this terminology for the previous mob. So I'm really pleased that we're starting to address this and using the correct terminology. This is just straight stealing from workers. And I think it's important that people understand that the superannuation system that is in place, it's really looked upon across the world as probably one of the best on the globe. And I mean, when I discuss this with my family in Italy, my friends in America, especially with their 401k, they're scratching their head going, you got what? You know, it's just amazing. And when you know, I guess retirement's not that far away from me. I'm in my 60s, but I look at that and I know with a certain gladness in my heart, we've got a system that is going to look after us pretty darn well, don't you reckon?
Yeah, I do. I think it's a world-class system. It is money that we could be pocketing today, but we're just putting it forward for the future and our retirement. So it's a great security net to have come retirement. And, you know, for those people that might not have enough, there's always, you know, the government age pension system that can help supplement any superannuation you might have. So it's a pretty good system, but always can do with improvements.
Yeah, and I guess that's what we're talking about today. And just one quick last fact before we get into today's subject. Ladies and gents, it's really good to know that probably in the last 12 months, the tipping point between those that do need the pension and those that don't tipped over 50% last year. So there are more self-funded retirees now than there are people on the pension. And so that's super working. And I just think it's brilliant. Anyway, last year there was a consultation paper, Natasha. Just give us a quick overview of what that consultation paper was seeking comment for.
Yeah, look, the whole consultation paper is really to pay super at the same time that employers pay their salary and wages for their employees. So, you know, that's a great win for employees. It's also going to result in greater compliance in the super system. So at the moment, for those that may not know, employees are only required to pay their employees super guarantee on a quarterly basis. So I'm moving it to a payday frequency to align it with payment of salary and wages. You know, it has a number of benefits. It's going to allow employees to have greater visibility over whether their entitlements have been paid, and will allow them not to be exploited by any dishonest employers. And it will lead to greater super guarantee compliance and will give the ATO earlier visibility of any underpayment or non-payment of super, and allow them to recover unpaid super a lot sooner. So that's the whole idea. It's really to get it aligned to payday and to really stop this underpayment or non-payment of super guarantee. The biggest benefit of this all is that it means moving to payday. It means contributions will be invested a lot sooner for employees, which means that their retirement savings will grow a whole lot faster, mainly because of the power of compounding interest, which effectively will mean that many Australians will be better off in retirement because their money is working a lot sooner. Look, this is all meant to kick off on 1 July 2026. So there's a bit of lead time here that will allow the ATO and payroll service providers and super funds enough time to make the necessary system changes that they need, and also for employers to adjust their cash flow practices to move to payday. So there's a bit of lead time there to get ready for payday super.
And again, I'll refresh our audience's memories. IFPA, the Institute of Financial Professionals of Australia, you're the old Tax and Super Australia. So your constituency is primarily tax agents and accountants. And so I'm curious, in lobbying your members and I guess hearing feedback, what was their general overview? What was their general sentiment towards this change, this proposed change?
Yeah, Ray, look, our response and our members' response to this is positive. We think it's a win. We think it's great for employees. It'll improve the compliance of the system. At the end of the day, you know, we mentioned underpayment or non-payment of super is wage theft. So, you know, tackling this and getting on the front foot and making sure that underpayment or non-payment stops is a great measure. in the paper, it talks about different ways to go about payday super. We'd like to see the super guarantee system move from the current due date model, which is at the moment, employers only have to pay super by the 28th day of every quarter. So we want to see it move from this current quarterly model to a pay date model, which is, when you pay salary or wages. So this will impose the requirement on the employer to make the payment of super guarantee contributions on the day that they pay super and wages. And this proposed model that we've mentioned in our consultation paper, our submission, to the government, is very similar to the government's employer payment model, with a couple of minor differences. So, the whole benefit is that it's going to facilitate these objectives of the payday super legislation better, because employees are going to see the payment of super guarantee as a usual and an expected way of paying salary and wages. It's going to streamline the whole process and encourage providers such as payroll providers to integrate payday super into their processes for payday. So, there's going to need to be some technological improvements along the way.
I guess that's the issue. I'm so attuned now to that when I see small business lobby groups get upset, and I've seen some reaction to this proposed change, and I'm scratching my head thinking to myself, the normal thrust of a microphone into the face of a cafe owner, during COVID, and the kind of things that we used to see, that, whenever there's a small business crisis, the cafe owners seem to be the pointy end that media loves putting in front of a camera. And I haven't seen that much this time around. So I guess your membership has been out there telling their clients, guys, there's nothing to worry about here. It may mean, and as you've rightly said, there's almost 2 years worth of transition time here. There's a lot of time to get one's cash flow in play. And certainly, given that I run a small business myself, I pay people. I mean, I see great benefit in doing this, because then I don't have to worry about keeping a quarter's worth of my super, my contractor's super sitting there. I just get rid of it out of the bank straight away. So I guess that's pretty much what you're hearing as well.
Yeah, certainly. I think we're all expecting, it's something that's been talked about for a long time, aligning super guarantee with your salary and wages. It's just odd that it wasn't that way to begin with. So it's something that everybody was expecting. So when the announcement was finally made, everyone went, oh, okay, well, this makes sense. If you're paying salary and wages, then it just makes sense for your super to come through at the moment with it. Because if you have a look at your pay slip, when you get paid, your pay slip tells you what you've earned for the week, the fortnight, the month, however often you get paid. And it also tells you what your super component is. But in reality, not all employers pay your super when, you get paid. Some of them pay on a quarterly basis. That's the legislative requirement. But employers can pay a lot sooner than that. They can obviously pay in line with your payment frequency. But, under law, they technically don't have to. They just have to pay quarterly. So it all just makes sense to be aligned and actually see your super go in at the same time your salary and wages get paid to your bank account.
Okay, look, it's just about time for a short break here on Dollars and Making Sense. Natasha, when we come back, I want to talk a little bit about the minutiae of some of the legislative changes that are being proposed. So we're going to go for a short break, and we'll be back in just a moment. Hi, and thank you for listening to Dollars and Making Sense, a weekly radio program about finance, money and investing on Radio Northern Beaches and nationally on the Community Radio Network around Australia. The views, comments and opinions aired during our program should not be construed or viewed as financial advice. Any commentary is general advice only and does not take into account your objectives, financial situation or needs. You should consider whether the advice is suitable for you and your personal circumstances. If in doubt, you should contact an authorised licensed financial planner. We welcome questions and feedback, and you can get in touch with us via our blog, social media channels or email. Please search for Dollars and Making Sense in your favourite podcast platform, or check out our blog at otgcapital.com.au/blog. Hi, and welcome back to Dollars and Making Sense, a weekly show about finance, money and investing. I'm Ray Trevisan, your host, and with me at the microphone today, I have Natasha Panagis from the Institute of Financial Professionals of Australia. And today we are talking super and Payday Super. So before we went to the break, Natasha, we were talking about the proposed legislative changes that are going to be brought into the government by the government. So instead of having quarterly chunks of super being paid by employers, we're now going to go to Payday. So the moment you get your pay, theoretically, the money will also go to your super fund, the 11 and 11.5, and by the time this comes in, it'll actually be 12%. So 12% will also then go off to your super fund at the same time. Now, before we went to the break, you said that your membership is pretty positive, but I guess we've got a fairly big transition time, a couple of years. What do you think is going to be some of the challenges that the small business owners are going to face in implementing this change?
Yeah, look, obviously for some of the micro businesses, the smaller businesses, some of the challenges they may face is the cash flow side of things. It's rather than, banking up that money and saving for it and paying it on a quarterly basis, which is the current legislative requirement, they're going to need to have to pay super on a more regular basis, on a basis of, when they pay their workers when they pay their workers' salary and wages. So cash flow is going to be one thing. Look, the other issue that some employers may face is the need to, the administrative requirements of doing this. So some out there in the industry have predicted that there may be an increase in administration or in payroll software and transaction costs once we move to Payday Super. And look, although technological improvements with systems and bookkeeping software does allow employers to automate the process of paying wages and salary and super, it could be likely that there may be an increase in transaction costs to use these systems if they are used more often to process payroll and super, particularly for those employers who may be paying their employees on a more frequent basis, such as weekly or fortnightly. So this could be burdensome for some smaller or micro employers. So who knows? Look, we might see employers who currently pay their employees on a weekly or a fortnightly basis move to a monthly frequency to make it easier for themselves from an administration point of view. Look, that we could see that. But look, as technology does improve, and assuming it does become more cost effective in the future due to competition, if paying super can be done in one click and be done that way without costing too much, then maybe it won't be a big issue for smaller employers. But they're just some of the things to consider and get ready for paying super. But again, there's also super clearinghouses, which I suppose we could touch on as well if we've got time.
Oh, sure. And I guess I'm speaking from the voice of experience. I actually run a small business. I pay people and I pay them super. Always have, and I'm very proud to say that my contractors because I come from an IT background as well, but my IT contractors, I've always ensured that they're super, and I make a point of writing to them to say, hey, your super went in today, because I want them to feel comfortable that they're not being ripped off. I think one of the clear elements, and I use one of the two major packages. We don't mention trade names here on community radio, but it's one of those big ones that starts with X, and it's not pronounced that way. But anyway, those changes that are being made, when you're talking about one click, I'm curious that reading in the consultation papers that you gave me for background reading, micro business lobbyists are still looking for a carve out and an exception. I must say, I run a micro business in that regard. I have less than 10 employees. It's not that hard, and it is one click. So once you've done your payday reconciliations and you've worked out what you're going to pay your people, I mean, sending your money off to super is no different than one click. You get an authorization back to say, here, plug in this code and your money goes. And we send it off to a clearinghouse just like everybody else. Now, I want to pick up on clearinghouses, because one of the things that was mentioned as a possible concern, and actually something that could lead to people being penalised, is clearinghouses delaying. Can you illuminate us a little bit on why that may be an issue?
Yeah, of course. Now, look, for those that don't know, a superannuation clearinghouse, it's an online portal that allows small business owners to make their super contributions for all of their employees in one single payment. So the
And that's
clearinghouse
what
will,
I do, for
yeah,
example. Yeah.
that's it. So you make the one payment to the clearinghouse, and then the clearinghouse will distribute that money to each employee's super fund on the employer's behalf. And in accordance with your employer's instructions. So the ATO has a free small business clearinghouse, and it's a free service. So for small businesses with 19 or fewer employees that have, turnover of less than $10 million, so they can use this free clearinghouse. And so the whole idea behind these clearinghouses is that it's supposed to reduce your compliance cost for small business employers by simplifying and streamlining the process of paying super. But that all said, there are some payment processing delays with super clearinghouses. The time that it takes for an employer's payment to be processed by the clearinghouse and deposited to their employee super funds has to be considered. For example, if you look at the ATO clearinghouse and provide the ATO with all of the required information, sometimes payments can still take up to 7 business days to be transferred through to the clearinghouse before they reach your employees.
I've seen it. I've seen it happen, and so I'm scratching my head, going, "What are they doing?"
Yeah. So look, we think at the moment super clearinghouses may be ill-equipped to handle payday super if it was introduced right now. So we're aware of these issues where clearinghouses can't process multiple payments in quick succession. And we've seen a history of delays where some payments have come through the clearinghouse and it's taken weeks, sometimes even months to process payments to be received by super funds. So we need to see the clearinghouse system improve to accommodate more frequent SG or super guarantee payments if they're going to be paid with payday. So in our submission to Treasury, we suggested that the government should consider regulating clearinghouses so that they are obligated to remit super guarantee on time under this payday model. So, assuming the employer pays super guarantee on payday, any issues that may arise between the payment and the receipt dates should then fall on the super clearinghouse, because at the moment, the clearinghouse's issue becomes the employer's issue. And if the clearinghouse doesn't pay the super guarantee on time, then the employer is penalised. So this is another reason why we prefer the pay date model, paying super guarantee on payday, to make sure that it all happens and the employer isn't penalised because of delays that might happen behind the scenes with the clearinghouse.
I must say, when I read that in the consultation paper and having seen and lived that experience of the delay, I just thought to myself, this is Australia. I've done the right thing. I've sent my money in on time. I've got a time date stamp, but I'm still responsible for the schmuck that I've paid for, because I pay for my clearinghouse service. I didn't realise that the ATO, I thought that had stopped. But anyway, I'll go back and relook at that. Thank you for informing me on that, Natasha. But
the ATO one's free, but there are commercial ones like the one, the ones that you're using.
And yet I'm still responsible if they screw up. When I read that, I just had this wry smile going, only in Australia can I still be held responsible for somebody else's screw up. So let's move on a little bit. I also read with interest that there is an introduction now of what looked like a reasonably simplified penalty scheme that I think makes a very clear point to the employers. Don't mess, because if you don't pay, you're going to pay at the back end the money that you owe and then some. What's the association's thought on the penalty regime that they're proposing?
Yeah, look, we think it will incentivize good behaviour. So it's a good start, but we think
big stick.
yeah. Look, and we do need it, unfortunately. But in our submission to the government, we suggested, or we put forward, we think that a fairer and a more proportionate penalty regime must be introduced, mainly to differentiate the difference between infrequent late-paying employers and deliberate non-paying employers. So we think there needs to be a difference in penalties for, depending on the employer and whether they do this on purpose or whether it's an accidental oversight. So at the moment, employers that accidentally don't pay on time or are penalised at the same harsh rate as employers who deliberately don't pay super on time for their employees. So this means late paying employers are still required to lodge a statement to the ATO, pay the penalty, lose deductibility for their contributions and be up for a whole range of other things. But we think that it should be different penalties for late payers and accidental payers versus deliberate employers. So, we do recognise that non-payers should be penalised more severely, but believe that late payers should be incentivised to pay with a penalty that is more proportionate and reasonable. So we think there should be a graduated penalty regime, so like a tiered-based penalty regime that is lenient on infrequent late-paying employers and more harsh on more deliberate non-paying employers. So, we've put out in a bit of detail what that might look like in our submission. So if you're interested, you can always have a look at that. But at the end of the day, having this penalty regime will encourage and incentivise compliance because employers will make these payments quite readily because they're going to be penalised with an interest cost from Payday if they don't pay. So, we're going to see, late paying employers not being overly penalised as compared to deliberate non-payers under our model anyway. So we'll have to wait and see which way the government goes. But I think a fair few associations out there have gone out to say, look, the penalty system does need to change depending on the employer's history of non-payment and the like. So, yeah, at the end of the day, non-paying employers who do it deliberately should face stronger penalties than those employers who accidentally, miss the cut-off date by a couple of days. So there needs to be a difference.
Sure. And finally, just to wrap up, SMSFs, I don't see too much impact here. What are your thoughts on this Payday? Will SMSFs be impacted in any way? I mean, I run my own SMSF. The money lands with the delay, but it gets there and I get all the information. So if we change to Payday Super, I'm looking at that just at the surface. I don't see too much change coming there.
Yeah, look, Payday Super is, at the end of the day, a measure that's targeting all super funds. At the end of the day, the difference for SMSFs is it comes down to their potential reporting and the ATO data matching models that's proposed in the government's consultation paper. They can't be applied to SMSFs. Now, this is because SMSFs only have an annual obligation to report contributions that form part of their members' information. Whereas large APRA funds, like your large industry funds, they have to report contributions on an ongoing basis. So the reporting requirements to the ATO are a little bit less for SMSFs. So in our view, we don't need to see SMSFs enter into the same systems that large APRA funds have, mainly due to the fact that individuals who choose to set up their own SMSFs have the sole responsibility of the management of their fund. They're usually on top of it. So we don't want to see SMSFs having to report data on a more frequent basis than what they're doing at the moment. And in many cases, SMSFs do receive super guarantee contributions from related family businesses. So trustees will generally know when their super contributions are made. And for any SMSF members who might have an unrelated third-party employer, then it's the trustee's responsibility to have oversight of their employer's super guarantee contribution. But at the end of the day, it comes down to the reporting. And if SMSFs are reporting on an annual basis to the ATO, then the ATO just won't have that real-time view of whether super guarantee has been paid for an SMSF member. So that's the main change or the main impact for SMSFs.
Okay, that's it. We're out of time. Natasha, always a pleasure to have you on the show. I will look forward to having more chats with you this year. And that's it for us here on Dollars and Making Sense. Natasha Panagis from IFPA, thank you kindly.
That's right. Talk to you next time.